So tonight, biblical principles for personal finances. Of course, we talked about things. So the whole last lesson we had was basically from the Bible, and we talked about the idea of work. I know that a lot of people that are all concerned about their finances aren't much concerned about working, but since this is a class that where we're looking at the Bible, I thought we should set that as the first thing. Work. The Bible, we were created to work. When we fell, that made the work even harder, but we should work. The Old Testament tells us we're created to work. The New Testament tells us that we ought to work. So if we don't, we're in rebellion against both the way we're created and what we're commanded to do. And that rebellion generally is called laziness. I gave a whole bunch of verses, and we didn't even talk about them, most of them from Proverbs, and then we finished it up with one passage about laziness and what happens to those who are lazy. So then tonight we're going to look at biblical principles for personal finance. We said that we're created, the first principle, and we covered it last week, we're created to work, and laziness is sin. And I would say that beside being sin, it's also hard. It's not real hard. Many times it's not hard to be lazy, but it's hard on you when you're lazy. Being lazy makes for a hard life. And then some people do work really hard at being lazy. Your kids know. You've seen your kids doing this. I mean, if they would just put that much effort into doing the job, it would be a lot easier than all the ways that we figure out to be lazy. So that's one principle, and we covered that in our last lesson. Then I want to go from what we said about in creation, the idea that God created us. He said we're to have dominion over the earth and replenish it. So having dominion over the earth and replenishing the earth assumes, I believe it assumes the growth of the things that are on the earth. And that turns out to be wealth. I mean, the things that are on the earth, there's gold and there's silver and there's corn and there's wheat and there's whatever. All the things that are here on the earth that are at our disposal, we're to have dominion over that. We're to do with it what God would do with it. And God wouldn't let it go to waste. He would work it. He would make it increase. That's what he makes everything that he's done grow. And so we're to do the same thing. And so having dominion over the earth and subduing the earth, putting it to work for us and for the glory of God, assumes that wealth, if we use a general word, use that as a general word, wealth will grow. It assumes the growth of wealth, all kinds of growth, all kinds of wealth, the wealth of produce, the wealth of products, the wealth of materials, the wealth of money, real estate. I would say that real estate is the one thing that really we're limited in space, in real estate. Maybe that's why it's called real estate. I don't know. There's a limited resource there. There's probably a limited resource of gold and those precious metals, but I don't think we've found all of them yet. But generally, individuals, even real estate can grow. You can have a small house and you can move into a big house. Now we can talk about covetousness and all of that. We will. But anyway, the principle that we should have dominion over the earth and subdue and replenish it assumes the growth of wealth. Now then, since we have fallen, since we are a fallen race, wealth or money can end up in the wrong place in our lives. Okay, we can't get rid of it because it was created with us, and it's something that we're to deal with. We're given responsibility for it, and we should be increasing it and increasing its value and increasing its worth and its usefulness. But since we've fallen, sometimes we don't look at it in the proper way. So So tonight, I would like to basically give us a long list of things that are more important than money and possessions, and then a long list of traps to avoid in our dealings with money and possessions. So, I have 11 things that are more important than money and possessions. All of these we can see from the book of Proverbs, and there's probably more than 11 categories. But we'll just start. Proverbs chapter 8. So we'll go to Proverbs chapter 8. Begin reading in verse 18. Proverbs 8, 18 through 21. Proverbs 8, 18 through 21 says, "Riches and honor are with me, yea, durable riches and righteousness." Now, some of you might not know who me is, but some of you do. Who is me? Wisdom. Okay? Wisdom is who is speaking here. You go back, verse 1. "Doth not wisdom cry?" So wisdom is speaking, and wisdom says, "Riches and honor are with me, yea, durable riches and righteousness. My fruit is better than gold, yea, than fine gold, and my revenue better than choice silver. I lead in the way of righteousness in the midst of the paths of judgment, that I may cause those that love me to inherit substance, and I will fill the treasure." So wisdom is more important than money. And we ought to be careful that we don't throw wisdom out the window in our pursuit of wealth and money. The next thing we see in a few different passages, Proverbs 11:24. We're not far from that one, so let's go there. Proverbs 11:24 says, "There is that scattereth and yet increaseth, and there is that withholdeth more than is meet, but it tendeth to poverty." Now, I want to just take a second here and say, I'm not opposed to Old English, but the way we would say that is to take the TH off there and put an S on it. So I'm going to read that again and see if it rings a little more true. "There is that scatters and yet increases, and there is that withholds more than is meet, but it tends to poverty." Okay? So hopefully you're not offended by me changing that TH to an S. But what is that saying? Generosity is more important than money. If you hold it in, and you're not generous, it's just going to disappear. You're not going to have it. Proverbs 19:17. Proverbs 19:17 says, "He that has pity on the poor lends unto the Lord, and that which he has given him will he pay him again." And Proverbs 22, verse 9 says, "He that has a bountiful eye shall be blessed, for he gives of his bread to the poor." So generosity is more important than money. Proverbs 22, verse 1. We know this one, don't we? Right? "A good name is rather to be chosen than great riches." Your reputation is more important than money. I thought it was interesting. A speaker recently, was that Sunday night, or said we don't have much control over our reputation, but we can control our character. Okay, so either way, so it says, "A good name is rather be chosen than great riches, and loving favor rather than silver and gold." So how do you maintain a good reputation? You're honest. Honesty is more important than money and things. You're prompt. You're proper. You're not a schemer. You're not a conniver. Okay? You don't want to be known as the guy that always is. What's he up to now? He's got some scheme that he's gonna. This is the way he's gonna make it rich. Okay? Or watch out for him. He's conniving for some way. He's going to be well off, and everybody else around him won't be. Okay? That's not a good reputation. It's a result of being bad character. But a good reputation, way more important than riches and wealth. Proverbs 30 tells us that contentment is more important. Proverbs 30, verse 7 through 9. Basically, anyway. 2 things have I required of thee, deny me them not before I die. Remove far from me vanity and lies, neither give me poverty nor riches. Feed me with food convenient for me, lest I be full and deny thee and say, Who is the Lord? Or lest I be poor and steal and take the name of my God in vain. Contentment, and there's plenty of other verses that teach us about contentment. Being content is more important than having things. Proverbs 16, verse 19. Proverbs 16, verse 19 tells us humility is more important. Better it is to be of a humble spirit with the lowly than to divide the spoil with the proud. So, I don't know if it really needs much explanation. Humility, way better to have that than have a bunch of spoils, riches, with pride. Peacefulness, I call this one. Proverbs 17, verse 1. Better is a dry morsel and quietness therewith than a house full of sacrifices with strife. Now, we should not think of, the idea of sacrifices there, let me just remind you, what was a sacrifice? Basically, it was like a huge barbecue. Okay, now, some of the sacrifices was burnt and given completely to the Lord, but many of them was offered, and what was done to it? Fire was put under it, and it was enjoyed. Okay? So if you have a house full of sacrifices, what's the point? Lots of food. House full of that. I mean, you have plenty of food and all that, but strife? Rather have just a dry piece of bread, not have all that stuff, not have all that plenty, with peacefulness, quietness, than a house full of things and strife. And there's plenty of houses. There could be, hopefully not, but there could be some in our own church. But there's plenty of houses in the world that have they have everything they would want except peacefulness and quietness. They come home and it's a fight. Okay, the guy makes plenty of money and figures that everybody should be happy in his house because they got plenty of money. They have everything they want, but he never wants to go home because he pulls his hair out. There's strife there. Peacefulness and quietness way better than having things. Love. Proverbs 15, 16 and 17. Kind of the same idea there. Better is little with the fear of the Lord than great treasure and trouble therewith. 15. Sorry. No, 15, 16, 17. And great treasure. So better is a little with the fear of the Lord than great treasure and trouble therewith. Better is a dinner of herbs where love is than a stalled ox and hatred therewith. This is not the young couples class necessarily, but we've all been through that. You're in a fight, you have this great dinner, and you're not at peace with one another. That's lots of fun, isn't it? But if you're right with each other, and all you have is whatever, ramen, it's better to have a meal of ramen and ramen, whatever, those unhealthy noodles full of sodium and whatever. Better to have that with love, right, John, Priscilla? They're showing off here. Than a steak dinner, and it's a good thing you're at two ends of the dining room table. So, integrity. Having integrity is better than wealth. Proverbs 28, verse 6. Better is the poor that walks in his uprightness than he that is perverse in his ways, though he be rich. A lot of people going for riches will give anything up for it, even their integrity. Some things that you just won't get involved in. Oh, but you'll be so well off if you just do this. And can't you tell that if you would do this, you'd be set? You wouldn't have to worry about anything. No, but you have more integrity than to do that. It's better to be poor, walking in uprightness, than perverse in your ways and be rich. Integrity is better than that. A prudent wife is better than riches. Proverbs 19, verse 14. Proverbs 19, verse 14. House and riches are the inheritance of fathers, and a prudent wife is from the Lord. If you have lots of riches and you don't have a prudent wife, what happens to your lots of riches? Might be some wives saying a prudent husband is from the Lord too. Lots of guys, what's that saying? Men are just boys with bigger toys or something like that. Oh boy, saw some ladies saying that's for sure. So, but a prudent wife is better than having a lot of riches. Low blood pressure. You didn't know low blood pressure was in the Bible, did you? Proverbs 23. Somebody else that I was reading called it this, and I thought that's a good way to just kind of summarize it. Verse 4 and 5. Labor not to be rich. Cease from thine own wisdom. Wilt thou set thine eyes upon that which is not? For riches certainly make themselves wings. They fly away as an eagle toward heaven. How many people work and work and work and work and worry and worry and worry about money? Don't. There's a lot better things to labor for. Now, we have to work. But if you're working and just everything you're doing, you just work to be rich, it's just going to disappear. So, and all that pressure, got to do this, all that pressure takes your health away. You can't enjoy it anyway. And then finally, and most importantly, Proverbs 11:4. Proverbs 11:4 says, riches profit not in the day of wrath, but righteousness delivers from death. At the judgment, riches aren't going to mean anything. Having eternal life, having God's righteousness, Christ's righteousness, is way more important than having money. So, all those things are more important than money. Does that mean we don't need money? Does that mean money is bad? No. Okay? Wealth is good. The love of money is not good. But wealth is not evil. It's not bad. It's good. Look back at Proverbs 8. We looked at this once already. Wisdom is good, right? And wisdom says in verse 21 that if you seek and follow her, she leads in the way of righteousness, and in the midst of the path of judgment, that wisdom may cause those that love her to inherit substance, and I will fill their treasures. You know, we could spiritualize that, but there's plenty of other places that show that God blesses, and with things, with material things, and having material things is not bad. It's our attitude toward it that's either good or bad. So wealth is good. Proverbs 10:22 says, the blessing of the Lord, what does it do? It makes rich. And he adds no sorrow with it. Now, somebody has sorrow with their riches, that's not the blessing of the Lord. Somebody has strife, all those things we talked about, that's not the blessing of the Lord. But the blessing from the Lord, it makes you rich. It makes rich, and he adds no sorrow with it. I'm not trying to preach a prosperity gospel. Somebody in here has thousands in credit card debt. You need to swipe your card, plant a seed, and it will just go. It will just disappear. No. I'm not preaching a prosperity gospel, but the Bible says the blessing of the Lord, it makes rich. Now, there's a lot of different ways to be rich. But just because there are other ways to be rich doesn't mean that God doesn't use money to make people rich, and not give sorrow with those riches. So, with our money, beside all the things that are better than money, what are traps to avoid? Here's a list of 9 traps to avoid. Can I get these 9 in 5.5 minutes? Let's start. The first trap to avoid is luxury. Luxury. Proverbs 21. I think we have to be comparative here because every single one of us lives in luxury compared to people in Zambia or in Cambodia where they live in cardboard houses. But comparative luxury, I would say. Proverbs 21. Oh, I wasn't in 21. Yeah, Proverbs 21:17. It's better to dwell in the No, that's 19. Oh, there's another one. No, that goes up with prudent life. It's better to dwell in the wilderness than with a contentious and angry woman. Okay, 17. He that loves pleasure shall be a poor man. He that loves pleasure. Say, well, I'm just gonna. I got the money, and I'm gonna make myself my way pleasure, full of pleasure, luxurious. He that loves pleasure shall be a poor man. He that loveth wine and oil shall not be rich. Now, this wine is not alcohol. It's not talking about alcoholic wine. But wine, people with money could buy lots of wine. Most people drank water, okay, and oil, okay, olive oil and grape juice. That's what rich people could afford. Okay? But if you love wine and oil, you're not going to be rich. I'm just going to pamper myself all my life. Luxury. Stay away from luxury. Stay away from that. Frivolity. Proverbs 28:19. Please don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that we all have to just sell our car and drive around in what Matt Morgan drives around in. You're that little thing, the little Matchbox truck that you have. We don't all have to have the smallest thing available, okay? But so I'm not trying to say that we all have to just walk everywhere and only ride bicycles, take vows of poverty like Buddhist monks and whatever. But so anyway, frivolity. Proverbs 28:19 says, He that tilleth his land shall have plenty of bread, but he that follows after vain persons shall have poverty enough. Following after vain persons. Vain, empty. People with empty ideas, empty people. They talk like they got big ideas. But you can follow this empty idea, you'll have poverty enough. That great idea will put your money in their pocket. Frivolity. What is vain? What is vanity? What is a vain pursuit? An empty pursuit. We pursue after things, follow after things that end up being empty. We get promised that there's something there and there's not. It's empty. Sleep. Sleep is a trap to avoid. Some of you are saying, I need to get into that trap right now. But sleep. Yet a little folding of the hands to sleep. Proverbs 20, verse 13. Love not sleep, lest thou come to poverty. Open thine eyes, and thou shalt be satisfied with bread. So, we shouldn't love sleep. Then let me just say, in passing, late nights normally leads to late mornings. If you're working late, you're working, okay? But staying up late, watching the next YouTube, doing research. Ends up making it hard to get up in the morning and get business. Illicit sex. Proverbs 5, verse 10. That's a trap. Proverbs 5, verse 10. Talking about the lips of a strange woman in verse 3. Lest strangers be filled with thy wealth, and thy labors be in the house of a stranger. Proverbs 6, verse 26. For by means of a whorish woman a man is brought to a piece of bread. All he has left is a piece of bread. He spent all his money at the whorehouse, on his credit card, on the website, whatever it is. Proverbs 29:3 says the same thing. Dishonesty. Dishonesty is a trap. Okay? I'm working hard. Oh, but you messed up, but if I just say a little bit something a little different than what's really true, I can get away with it. I'll be okay. Dishonesty. Proverbs 20, verse 10. It says, diverse weights and diverse measures. Both of them are alike abomination to the Lord. Now that's not exactly what I was leading into. A diverse weight or diverse measure in those days, the Bureau of Weights and Measurements was not around. So you have a weight that says this weight equals a talent. Let's say it's probably a talent, it's pretty heavy, but you'd have 2 or 3 sets of weights. You'd have a light set and a heavy set and a real set. So I don't know how, I can't think quick enough to how you'd do that. But if you were buying, you'd use a certain set so that you could get more for your talent. If you were selling, you'd use a different set. So you'd give less out for your talent. I don't know if you're that way, why you would need something that was actually accurate or honest. But dishonest, that's what that's referring to, dishonesty. Proverbs 11:18. The wicked works a deceitful work, but him that sows righteousness shall be a sure reward. I want to get to this one, Proverbs 27, 1 and 2. Proverbs 27, 1 and 2. Boast not thyself of tomorrow. Thou knowest not what a day may bring forth. Let another man praise thee, and not thine own mouth, a stranger, not thine own lips. Boast not thyself of tomorrow. I'll have a job next week, so I can use some money that I'm going to make next week to pay for this thing. I'll have a job next year. I'm not saying never buy anything on time, but pretty much the only thing people that are wise about their finances buy on time is a house. For sure, not a vacation. I'll be able to pay for it. Boast not thyself. You don't know that you'll be able to pay for it. Debt, that's a little bit of the same idea. That leads into this idea. Proverbs 22:7. That the borrower is servant to the lender, right? Proverbs 22:7. There it is. Nope. Yes. The rich rules over the poor, and the borrower is servant to the lender. You're not going to get rich by going into debt. I know the business world these days says you gotta spend money to make money, but old time biblical principles are, you don't spend money you don't have. You're not gonna. If you spend this money, if you just plant the seed, right? It's the same thing. If you spend this much, come to my class. I'll give you a free meal and a DVD, right? And then I'm going to sell you something that you can follow my program for $189, and you'll become a millionaire. If you don't have the $189, don't do it. And you know what happens? You won't become a millionaire. He's become a millionaire because he got 1,000 people to spend $189. No, 10,000 people to spend $189 on his product. Entanglements. We won't look at the verses. Money entanglements. I had a little mark there. Meaning tying your money up, being surety for someone else. loaning money to someone else. You shouldn't loan money to people, especially people that are just your friends. Somebody needs money, give it to them. What does the other verse say? He that gives to the poor lends to the Lord. You want to lend your money to somebody, lend it to the Lord. Quick, easy money, making haste, working hard, quick, rich scheme. Get rich quick schemes. Entanglements. Some verses to go with that. Proverbs 17:18 and Proverbs 22:26. Then, quick, easy money. Get rich quick schemes. Proverbs 13:11, Proverbs 28:20 through 22. And then, something that a lot of people don't get the opportunity to do, but in American culture today, a lot more people are doing it, and that is spending your savings. There's even bumper stickers that proclaim to the world that they're spending their children's inheritance. We're supposed to laugh at that. But the Bible says that a good man leaves an inheritance to his children and his children's children. The Bible says that a servant that is a good servant will take part in the inheritance. If you're spending your children's inheritance, there won't be an inheritance, and you're not being biblical. So those are traps that we fall into in relationship to our money. So this week, principles. In our next lesson, we will talk about envelope budgeting. And that's one that I really like to talk about because I have personal experience with it. So envelope budgeting next, in our next lesson.